Okay. Mic check 1 2 1 2. I am the Y2K collector and I'm back. I have a new video and this is I guess you would say part 3 of my PlayStation collection series. In the first episode, I talked about the alternatives, which were basically PlayStation 1 games that were so expensive, I wasn't able to buy them complete in box. So I either bought a reproduction case or I bought a reproduction game, something. Not everything is OEM. So that's where I started. Then in the second episode, I talked about the games that I considered shovelware, which is pretty much just like the lowest of the low. I guess, those are the games that are most easy to find. You can walk into any pawn or thrift store or most gaming stores and you can find these games real easy. In episode 3, I'm going to be talking about the games that aren't shovelware, but they're pretty much low tier. These would be the low tier PlayStation games. And I have about 30, but I only really wanted to go over about 12 of them with you, just because the others are a little bit tough to dig out. And so I'll be going over those with you. And then I'll also be sharing a few more end of summer pickups. And I did get a few gems, so I'll take some time and go over that with you as well. So why don't we go ahead and get things started? We're going to go ahead and start things off with Batman and Robin. This is Batman and Robin for the PlayStation 1. Batman and Robin was a great game, and actually let me get that in focus. Alright, yeah, so Batman and Robin was a great movie, game. Not so much of a big fan of the game. The graphics are really tough to get through in this game. I mean, even from the very beginning, everything is just really dark and pixelated, but love the Batman movie. Wanted to have this in the collection because it is an action game. I do enjoy those, and like when you're driving in the Batmobile, it's not that bad, so pretty cool game. All right, next up we have Alundra 2. So Alundra 2 is a follow-up to the notorious Alundra game made by Working Designs. I'm not sure why Working Designs isn't responsible for part 2, but the Working Designs Alundra part 1, that one is pretty pricey. This one is a lot more common. You can find this in a bunch of stores. It's fun action RPG. Check that out there. This next game is very different. It's made by Capcom. It was one that I picked up a couple years ago, and it's called One Piece Mansion. And this is a very interesting game. You're pretty much a landlord, and you're responsible for maintaining a building and charging people rent. Very different type of game, very much a strategy-based game, very cool, still sealed, but I do have every intention of jumping into this. Very fun game, One Piece Mansion. Next up we have Saga Frontier 2. This is a Squaresoft game. This is when Squaresoft was still putting stuff out on the PlayStation, and Squaresoft had a few gems on the PlayStation 1. And this is Saga Frontier 2, very good looking RPG. Definitely check that out. PlayStation has a ton of classic RPGs on it. Now here's a genre that I don't think did too well on the PlayStation as a whole, but this is 1945 and this is a shmup. You didn't get too many great shmups on the PlayStation. Actually, I take that back. You did get a few when you think about games like Einhander, In the Hunt, Ray Storm, Ray Crisis, G Darius. I guess there were a few. 1945 wouldn't be considered top tier, but this is a great arcade shoot 'em up that you can get on the PlayStation for very cheap. So check that out. Then we have another one up here. This is Ninja. Made by Eidos. These are the same folks that brought us Tomb Raider. Pretty much an action adventure game. You're going through your levels, you get ninja stars, you get your little potions and your sword to kind of make it through. Interesting game. Definitely would recommend you checking it out if you're into action and adventure. Next up we have Destrega. Now this is a fighting game that feels a lot like Dragon Ball Z. Especially the way the fighters shoot their projectiles. Interesting fighting game on the PlayStation 1, not too common. Check it out. This is one I wanted to have in my collection. Next up, we have another Squaresoft gem, Bushido Blade. This is a very interesting fighter. This is one of those fighters where all it takes is one well-timed hit and you can beat your opponent. Very interesting, very cool. If you're into fighters, I would check it out on the PlayStation 1, Bushido Blade. Now we're going to do a bit of a 2-for-1 here. I think some folks will like this. We have Tenchu and Tenchu 2. So the Tenchu series was a popular series on the PlayStation. It's not a very expensive game right now. I feel like you can get and find Tenchu for a very, very reasonable price. And Tenchu is pretty much just a action stealth type of ninja game. Graphics aren't too great, especially on the first one. If you're into graphics, I am into graphics. And that's one of the reasons why I can't play these too much. But these are a couple of PlayStation classics right here. Tenchu and Tenchu 2. Tenchu and Tenchu 2, rather. Check it out. Okay, we have another pretty cool strategy game. This one's by Agetec. Another interesting one. And this is Board Game Top Shop. And this is kind of like One Piece Mansion in that you're managing basically a mall. And you have to make sure that all the stores are paying you rent. And this is just another strategy, monopoly type of game where you're managing money and resources and, you know, making sure that everyone pays up. So you could learn some pretty cool lessons from this one, Board Game Top Shop. And it's not that common. All right, next up we have Omega Boost. This is kind of like a first-person space shooter, kind of like second or third-person space shooter. Just the motion. I get motion sickness playing games like this, but this is fun. This game does have better graphics on the PlayStation 2. It's just not my type of action game, but it is a cool one to have. Okay, next up we have Floating Runner. And Floating Runner is one of those games, one of those open 3D adventure games on the PlayStation 1. Nothing to write home about per se, but it is an interesting game and it's not that common to find on the PlayStation 1. And then last but not least, we have a classic, and I would consider this game a classic, and that's Taifu, right? And if you've never played a PlayStation game before and you've played Taifu, this probably stuck out in your head. I remember a lot of commercials and a lot of campaigning around this game, but this is a very cool action adventure game, kind of open world. You get power-ups and special moves, and this game could have been a little bit better I feel like if they could have took a little bit more time, but very fun game. It doesn't get the credit it deserves in my opinion, but this still would probably go into the low tier when it comes to my personal PlayStation collection. All right, and that does it for the low tier games in this episode. Now I kind of want to take a second and just kind of go through some of my more recent end of summer pickups. Just bear with me. Okay, so we got the end of summer pickups here, and I'm going to kind of go through some of those with you now, just to kind of go over some of the things that I'm picking up before the end of the year. I've been spending a little bit more time focusing on the PlayStation 2 as well as the PSP. I feel like I wanted to, bulk up my PSP collection a bit, just because I do have a good amount of games for it, but I just don't have as many games as I have on the Vita. And the PSP does have a bunch of really cool classic games, so definitely wanted to make some additions there, and I'm going to share some of those with you now, starting off with the PSP. So the first game up is Valhalla Knights. This is an interesting kind of like action RPG game, pretty cool. I watched some footage on this one, and it's made by Xseed, and Xseed is known for putting out some pretty cool games. I was able to snag this up online. It's still sealed, pretty cheap too, and so I'm looking forward to diving into this Valhalla Knights on the PSP. Next up, we have another pickup here. This is Deadhead Fred on the PSP. This is a pretty cool pickup. Didn't pay $29.99 for it. No, I didn't. But it did come with that sticker on it, so it's okay. Stickers are a part of gaming, especially when you're dealing with used games. So I'm not allergic to stickers. If it's that bad, I'll just peel it off. But This is a pretty cool looking adventure game on the PSP, action adventure. Again, PSP was very RPG heavy, so you're not going to find a ton of action games on the PSP, but the ones that are there are pretty cool. And Deadhead Fred is one I wanted to check out. Another one I wanted to check out was a pretty cool one I haven't heard much about, and that's Alien Syndrome. And this is by Sega. You know, Sega makes some pretty cool games, and this looked like another adventure kind of shooter, kind of like isometric shooter for me to check out. So this is one I wanted to add to the PSP collection. Looking forward to diving into this one. This one was sealed as well for pretty cheap. You can still get physical PSP games for very cheap, so definitely check those out. Then you have Dungeon Explorer for the PSP. It's made by Hudson. Just again, a cool looking action game right here on the PSP. Saw it, wanted to check it out, and this was a pickup that I made for the collection. And then we're going to go over 4 quick PS2 games that came in that I added to the collection. And starting off, I may have talked about this one already, but Bully. This was a recent ad. I picked this up towards the end of the summer. Bully is a classic game. I don't think you'll see games like this made anytime soon, games based on bullying, but this is a Rockstar game. Had a lot of the same mechanics as like the GTA games and stuff. They made some pretty cool 3D beat 'em up games, and if you like 3D beat 'em ups, this is a good one. Next up, you have the classic Klonoa 2. Who could ever forget Klonoa, let alone Klonoa 2? So this was one on the PSP that I wanted to get. I don't really get like a lot of cutesy games like this, but Klonoa is the exception just because of how much of a classic it is and how great the gameplay is. So wanted to snag that up on the PSP. PS2 rather. Pretty clean copy. Next up is one. These two kind of fall in a similar category. They're kind of like quirky games, and PlayStation had a ton of these type of quirky games. And the first one up is Graffiti Kingdom. A little bit of residue there. Got to clean this one up, but great game. Kind of like an action game where you like draw, you know, the type of character you want to be. Just a very, you create your own hero, as it says in the back. It's a very interesting game. And you saw a lot of quirky games like this on the PlayStation 2. So this was one I wanted to check out and add. So I added that. And then last but not least, I went ahead and added Magic Pengel, however you want to say it. This is an Age-Tech RPG game. Great looking graphics on the PS2. Very interesting game mechanics is again, just one of those quirky games. And I had a lot of quirky games in this video. So if you like quirky games, hopefully you like these pickups and you like those quirky games that are in my PlayStation 1 collection. But that does it for this weekend. Hope you're enjoying the weekend. Hope you continue to enjoy the weekend. Again, I am the Y2K Collector. Let me know what some of your end of summer pickups are, and let me know what games you would consider to be low tier in your PlayStation collection. Alrighty. Once again, I am the Y2K Collector. I hope you have a good one. Peace.